Hi everyone! Thank you so much for coming here today, and thank you to Melbourne Fashion Festival for hosting this event. Before we start, we just want to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet today, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and also pay our respects to any Torres Strait Islanders or Aboriginal people here with us today. Thank you all. I'm Wintana.
And I'm Rahel.
And we're the hosts of the Bittersweet podcast. For those who don't know about us or the podcast, we started this platform in 2019 as a way to just share our experiences as Black women living in Australia and also connect with people of colour living here. So, you know, connect with the community. And yeah, like it's been a beautiful journey. And so today we're here to talk about fashion. We brought on these amazing panelists. Could you please give a round of applause for Malaan? Hey! And this is an extension of what we do. You know, we love to bring on guests that are contributing to the shift in the culture that's been happening. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you all for being here. You look beautiful. So give yourselves a round of applause. Yeah, clapping today. This conversation is going to be about exploring what the future of fashion and what the future of fashion looks like, and you know when it's influenced by culture and the opportunities that can be brought up, you know, just by having people of color and different cultures and different platforms bringing that kind of contribution. So I want to start off by talking about, you know, we all know that Australian culture, in particularly Melbourne, is known as a multicultural hub, but we know how much representation is lacking in the mainstream. So, you know, we have Malaan and Karinda today who are really shaking up the landscape of Australian culture, and Helen, who wasn't able to be with us today, but she started her own platform called Scenic Floors, again, which is a fashion brand that, you know, just pretty much recreating their own path. So it's really exciting. This conversation is going to be really exciting.
Thanks, Wintana. So, as Wintana mentioned, we have two amazing panelists here today, Karinda and Milan. So we're going to be talking about creativity, fashion, identity, and business. So Karinda is a stylist and the creative director of Style by Us and Them, a styling and creative consultancy team skilled in creating dynamic images to service music, fashion, film, events, runway, and personal style. So do you want to give her a round of applause? And we also have Malaan. So Malaan is an Australian South Sudanese model currently signed with the Talent Bureau in Melbourne. Malaan was discovered at 17 in her final year of high school. She debuted her first ever runway in New Zealand Fashion Week back in 2010 and immediately gained international recognition. She's also one of the first South Sudanese models to be signed by top modeling agency Ford Models New York back in 2011. So, just to kick us off and get the panel started, I'd like to start by asking both of you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got into the industry. So Malaan, would you like to start?
Oh my goodness, of course I'll start. Hi everyone, thank you so much for showing up. This is like, honestly, I would have never imagined having a space like this back in the days when I started modeling, because there was no space for people of color or models. In my case, that were represented in the media or in the industry at all. So this is like something that's really like humbling for me to be here and actually be in front of you to share my experience. So I got scouted when I was
They come in for you.
I got scouted when I was in year 12 at 17. I had one of my girlfriends signed with an agency, and he just so happened to come across my page on Facebook and sent me a message. Obviously I was underage, so I let my family know. And unfortunately that time, modeling and the fashion industry was something that's like really taboo in my community. So of course they said no. They said you've got to stay in school and become a doctor or a lawyer. But I said no. Look at this leg. Look at this leg. New York is calling me. Yeah, so I got signed, and as you mentioned, my first runway was in New Zealand Fashion Week. I was 17, I was so young, I didn't know what I was going into, but I don't know, for some reason I just wanted to be there. I love fashion, I love clothes, I love traveling. I saw it as an opportunity for me to travel the world and like, I don't meet new people and just like go outside my comfort zone and also kind of break barriers in my community, which has been something that I've been a huge advocate for girls in my community to just, I'm getting nervous now. I'm getting passionate, that's what it is. Yeah, just to break barriers and just like not to be like the societal norms that we are being put in just even in society in general, I shouldn't just say community. But yeah, so I went off to New York and I was there for a good year. I was only 18, being thrown into the Big Apple. I mean, you're not a model until you go to New York, right? I was still very shy and timid. I didn't know why I was like, I wasn't all this attraction in the industry. But because when I was here, I went to agencies and they all said no, because the market and the, I guess like the face of Australia was didn't really look like me. So a lot of girls had to go overseas to find work. And then once you make a name overseas, that's when Australia decides to claim you. And they're like, oh, our top model.
I feel like that's true of all industries.
Yeah, right, really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, anyway, so that happened. Went overseas, but because I was still quite young and I really wanted to please my family, I've always tapped my foot in and out of the industry. So, and that's why I'm still here today. Thankfully, the industry has changed a lot, and that's what we're going to get into today, letting you know my experience and what I think is happening now and what happened then and what the different changes have been. And I've been able to witness all of that. So, yeah, I'm really grateful to be here and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Malaan. Karinda, would you like to give us some background as well?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely fell into styling by way of stage performance, which is a very roundabout kind of way of getting into it. But yeah, I studied music theatre at university and then did professional music theatre for ages. And then after that, it's kind of, that's the journey that then took me into this world of things which I really fell into. So I moved to London and there I worked in a store in Notting Hill, which is like, I don't know if you know London, but it's a fancy area. So the store was actually owned by two Australian women who were from Sydney, but they would bring in a lot of different brands, so a small boutique that had a lot of small brands, but within that, because of its location, we would dress people like Jamie Oliver's wife, and the Jaggers would come in to be dressed and buy their Christmas presents, and so it was that sort of foray into, even though it was working in a store, it was still a little bit about like personal styling and also kind of getting into dressing people for events. They would come and borrow outfits to wear to whatever, a movie opening or whatever it is that they're going to. And so that kind of started that seed or a journey. And at the same time, I was also working on the West End, but in the costume department. So again, completely different training, but it's sort of then all kept coming together, so random, serendipitous sort of things that just came together to make now what I do possible. But at the time I was kind of like, this is random. I wanted to do stage stuff. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't know what I want to do. Yeah. I'm just going to say yes to these things until I don't like doing them anymore and see where it takes me. And I think that has really ultimately led me to where I am now. It's like kind of a culmination of all the things that I learned along the way from all the really random jobs that I had. It's like, stage costume, and then working in stores. I moved to New York and then to LA after that, and did, similar sorts of things. I did a bit of film production and development, like really random things. But then all of those things, now doing this sort of creative direction and styling, all makes sense. And I guess if I'd maybe been I'm not the type of person who is very, not forward thinking, but I'm not, you know, I don't have a trajectory. I'm not like, in 5 years I want to be this. I'm just kind of like, it's all about connection for me and about people and bringing community together. And so I'm more about the story and the fun and the, you know, like whatever that is. And so if it's a tiny little project or it's a massive thing, it doesn't matter to me as long as the people are great and, you know, the creativity is there.
I love that. And I love how everyone seems to have like also being like inspired by going overseas, because that's similar to Rahel's story and my story, where it's like there's so much happening there and you bring it here and it's just like the possibilities are endless. But this next question is for you, Karinda. You have obviously been in this industry for some time now. You're really like an OG stylist in Melbourne. And I'm just curious to know what the trend, like seeing a lot of people of colour come to surface now, what has that transition felt like from when you first started, and how do you view diversity from then and now?
The great thing about it now is that, you know, like commercial clients and, you know, it's something that's on the forefront of everyone's mind, and whether that's because, you know, they have to do it for inclusion purposes or whether people are actually authentically really wanting to do something, it is in people's minds, and that's something that's really changed from when I first started. It really was like, if I would, and I'm an advocate for, you know, like obviously working with people of colour, and I want to see people that look like me in everything, so like bring it on, the more the better.
It's like whenever we're on a project together, we sit there like, oh my god, hey!
Yeah. And so it's that thing also about building community as well. So it is, you know, like for instance, Malaan and I think we first worked together maybe on Eric. Yeah. So Eric Yvonne is a Melbourne-based designer who I do all of his like styling for photo shoots and put together his runway shows and things like that. And each season we kind of do a crazy Instagram stalk of like models and like people to like front to be his, you know, the next muse or the next like iteration of what the brand is. And so I think that's how Malaan and I first met. But then since then we've done so many things together, because it's that thing of community, of really enjoying working with people, about being able to like storytell and kind of create something together. And obviously in life, it's like when you meet friends, when you meet people, you're going to gel with some people and you're not with others. And I guess for me, it's like being really authentic is, I'm usually kind of like what you see is what you get. Like, I'm not one to sort of change my personality that much. Which
is something that happens a lot in the industry, so I really appreciate your realness.
It does, and it's like, and that's a difficulty, I guess, with the stereotypes of the fashion industry, or about, you know, like how a stylist is supposed to act or how a model is supposed to be, you know. I mean, when I was working in New York, a friend of mine who is the fashion director for T magazine at the New York Times, and we'd worked together, so we knew each other for ages. I went back to see him in New York and he was styling a show for New York Fashion Week, and I went to his fittings, and this child came to the door to open it, like literally somebody who was like an intern who was maybe like 18 just, and was literally like, hi, come in, like so, like on the edge. And I just went in and I'm like, what is going on here? And literally it's that thing of when in New York, in those institution places, there is like a hierarchy. It kind of is like Devil Wears Prada. It sort of is that. And I was I'm like, you're a lovely person. Like, why are you treating this person this way? Like, they're a quivering mess. They're not going to be able to help you do your job well. Like, if everyone kind of just keeps a clear, level head and is courteous to each other, no matter whether you're, you know, like second dresser from the right who's never done it before, or if you've been working in the industry for 500 years, I don't think it matters. It's like the common courtesy and you get more out of people that way, like because they feel empowered to be able to do something, and then it builds a team rather than you know, a hierarchy of people just on a power trip for no reason.
Yeah, it also scares a lot of people from trying to even enter that industry. If you have that bad experience, it's like, which takes away a lot of opportunity for like innovation in that space.
Well, definitely. I feel like even just sitting on this panel right now, the level of comfortability you feel when you're kind of like in that type of space of just like feeling like you belong and all of that, it just creates like so much more confidence for everyone. So this question is for you, Malaan. Last year you worked with Adore Beauty in their Global Shades campaign, an open letter to all Australians. Can you tell us all a little bit more about the campaign, its message, and why it resonates so strongly with you as a South Sudanese model working in Australia?
Well, another touchy one. So I worked on a campaign, but we called it a movement last year with Adore Beauty, and it was to basically amplify all our voices and let the retailers know that they need to stock all shades. So all available foundation shades need to be stocked in Australia, because look at us, all of us in here in this room, we are different kinds of shades and we're all Australian. But unfortunately for you know, people of color, it's really hard for us to access certain things. This was a makeup foundation that, you know, like you know, me being part of that campaign was basically telling my story as a model. I had to carry my foundation everywhere I went, because makeup artists, not that they didn't have access to it. I mean, sometimes if I could find it, they could surely have found it themselves as well. But I always give them the benefit of the doubt, that because they can't go to store and buy it the way they could buy it from my, you know, other colleagues who were, you know, fair skinned than me. I had to go on eBay and you know, order it from the United States and wait for months for it to arrive and still carry it with me. So basically this movement was to get our voices out there and let the retailers know that this was in demand, and that if you stock it, we'll buy it, right? So out of that campaign, Woolworth was the first retailer that then decided to stock some of the darker shades. And this was, unfortunately, was a trial. So it was to see whether, all right, we're gonna stock it, and then we'll see if it sells out, then we'll see what we'll do about it. So then I, again, you know, wanted to be part of this movement, because I want younger, my younger siblings or any younger person of color to not have the same experience, difficulty that I had when I was growing up. So, you know, obviously, thankfully, social media is like, honestly, like the best, best tool right now that we have to really get our voices out there. So I really use my platform to try and educate people on certain issues for my industry. And yeah, so that's what the movement was. We try to call it a movement instead of campaign, because campaigns are run all the time, and campaigns are things that start now, and then once it's finished, it's over. But this is something that wanted to be an ongoing conversation. So yeah, go to Woolies and buy the foundation. So then they can stock it, and then 16-year-old Malaan can go into Woolies and buy a, I don't know, $9 foundation instead of going to MAC or going to bigger brands and spend $60 and that they don't have just yet because they're, you know, in school and just trying to study really hard and not play with makeup.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like a lot of us can really resonate with that story. For me, growing up, it was, going to MAC. It was what, like $60, $70. Like you couldn't just go to the drugstore like everyone else, or, you know, I would compromise and just do like 3 shades lighter, and I'd look whack. No one would tell me I look whack. I'd just be walking around looking like a clown. Yeah, and my friends would say, oh, you look so good, but it's like, oh my God. Anyway, like I just say, and I love that you use the word movement instead of campaign, because it just makes all the difference. And we do see right now like Fenty Beauty, etc., all shades, but it's still not, like I'll still go to Priceline and it's sold out. But thank you, I just want to say.
It's happening. There's small changes, but it will happen.
Yeah. So Karinda, you described, and you mentioned it before, that you really like cherish authenticity, and that's something that you carry along with you in all the work that you do. But you specifically describe yourself as a visual storyteller, thoughtfully diverse and creatively authentic. Can you talk us through specifically why you chose that language and what goes into your process of celebrating authenticity and individuality in the fashion industry in general, but also your work as a wardrobe and personal fashion stylist?
That is a huge question. I think probably the main thing for me about authenticity, and this is regardless, like this is kind of across the board, is about finding out who the person is and telling the story through the clothing that they're wearing. So I guess maybe that's where my theatre background comes in, because all those years of like learning how to dissect a character, and it's almost that. It's like every time I create an image or work with a person, I've been doing a lot of work recently with like personalities, I guess, like comedians and actors working for Channel 10, and like that's a completely different thing in itself, because you're dressing a person, which is different to dressing a model where they don't get a choice. Like literally it's like, great, that is what you wear. Doesn't really matter if you don't like it, as long as the designer likes it and I'm happy with it, that's all it is, like then done. Whereas like dressing a real person is like a completely different thing, and somebody who's also in the media as well. So it's kind of about getting inside the character of the person to be able to create an authentic story. And in terms of diversity, I always try and have, in terms of casting or putting something together, I'm always considering, what are the faces that we're seeing here? Like, are we representing like what's right for the brand, but also what's right for the people who are buying, about engaging with different communities, and also about finding out more about what that is, like who that person is and how they can fit into, especially working with commercial clients, like how that story can fit into their brand, and also help to inform them about their customer base and about how their brand is perceived by other people. So yeah, it's kind of that journey of putting all those things together. And you don't always get to choose. Sometimes it is, you can push as hard as you want, but if you're working with a commercial client, then it's whoever's on the other side of the camera or on the other side of that thing, it's their choice at the end of the day. But I always try and come with like some sort of information or something that really backs up the whatever it is that I'm trying to kind of achieve, and sort of gently steer people in a direction that is maybe a little bit more inclusive than what they normally would have, or try and get them to think outside of the box a little bit, like something that's different. I feel like people are always trying to be safe. They're like, oh, that's good, but like it's a little bit edgy, or it's a little bit too, where it's like, well, you know what, maybe people will want that, like it doesn't have to always be how it's always been. And like innovation and new things is what people are craving, and now more so than ever, because you see everything on Instagram or on TikTok or on whatever platform you're on. In 10 seconds you've seen a million things, and then you're like, cool, seen it, next, what's next? And so it's like the turnover is so quick, and brands are still, I think, getting their heads around how that works and what they actually have to do, which is, it's exciting, because it means that there's way more opportunity, and also a lot more opportunity for younger creatives, because before it really was a hierarchy of like, have you worked in the industry for 50 years and you started off as the junior male person and then you worked your way up and now you're the senior editor. Whereas now I feel like Australia's kind of embracing more of what I found when I was working in America, where it is very much like, cool, you've got a great idea, awesome, I want you to be part of this, let's just do it. And that means that there's way more opportunity, there's way more kind of innovation and communication between people who maybe otherwise would not have met, which I think is what makes like fashion now way more exciting, because of that possibility.
Yeah, and Malaan, you said it before as well, how social media has become a tool, and people are just you know what, I don't know anyone, let me just create something on social media and we'll see if it pops off.
Yeah.
And it's also the beauty of having diverse people like yourself be in this industry, because a lot of the times it's really a gatekeep, like it's a very exclusive industry. If we don't have the right people in place or different people in place, then it's just not going to go anywhere.
Yes.
But
And
yeah.
just to add on to that, like Karinda's, the first shoot that we did together was like the most diverse shoot that I've ever been on in my 10 years of being in the career. Like, you were a person of color, the photographer was a person of color, it was Eric, there was the designer. Like, I've never been in a room that was so diverse ever in the fashion industry. So, and like every other time I've worked with you, it's always been like that. Even the makeup artist had my shade. Like, she knew she was working with a dark skin model that day, so she was prepared.
I mean, that's a definite thing for me as a stylist. Like, I can't stand it. Like, I get it. And like, people will say to me, oh, can you just, sometimes it'll be like, oh, the hair and makeup person, can you just fix that person's hair? And I'm like, do you see my hair? To me, but I'm like, do you see my hair? Like, I don't know what to do with like straight hair. I just can't. It's slippery. I don't know how it works. Like, you know, and so it's really, and it's the same thing, I guess, like now also, like the importance of hair and makeup artists and them being skilled in doing all shades, all hair types, all everything, so that when they come to a shoot, it's not a novelty that they're actually able to do anyone who's got any hair that's like curlier than mine, for
It's
instance.
about hiring the right people.
It is, and that's something you've really got to consider. Like, I'm not going to hire a makeup artist or a hairstylist if for a shoot where I've got, you know, African models or models that have, you know, like got different types of hair, if I don't know 100% that person can do that job, because I'm not asking the model to do their hair.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like the girls with the straight hair, they come, they just wash their hair and they come in the morning. I'm not saying to, you know, the girls with the curly hair, you've got to do like 7 hours of whatever that you're not going to get paid for, but this other person can rock up and get their hair done on the day.
And also like risk the chance of it not looking good. If you're a stylist, I think, or a makeup artist or a hairstylist, you should, you know, even have an openness to learning about how to work with different kinds of textures, because that's not fair for a model like yourself. And this even like loops into my next question, because I wanted to ask, you know, in the more recent years, we're seeing, especially after 2020 and the BLM movement, we're seeing a lot of like different brands, especially like in the makeup and the fashion and the beauty industry, advocate for people of color, for black creators, for black models and all that stuff. I want to know from your experience, do you think that it's an authentic approach, or do you feel like it's very tokenistic or, you know, very trending? Or do you feel like, you know, when you get in there, do you feel like, okay, you know, they actually do care? Or do you feel like there's a lot of reform and there's a long way to go?
Yeah, right. I mean, first of all, we do have a very long way to go. But in saying that, there has been, from my experience at least, I have seen a lot of changes. And that starts from even like agencies having more than one dark skin model on their board. Back in the days, it used to be, we've already got your look, and that means they've already got one other person of color amongst all the blondes and brunettes and say, we've already got your look. So that has changed a lot. There's more girls being signed in different agencies, and more than one, which is great. Secondly, a lot of brands are using people of color, or using not the faces that they normally use for their campaigns. And it's very apparent to you now if you walk around, all the campaigns that you see now are, you know, people of color or like people from diverse backgrounds, which is really great to see. Is it tokenism? I'm not sure. And so I can't completely say whether some brands are being honest or not. And I think we can all tell by ourselves just by seeing how the brand acts after that, or what the story is behind using that particular model for their campaign. You know, there is marketing tools. I mean, it's sad that it took BLM movement in order for brands to finally be like, oh my God, we need to do something about it. It's been a problem for a very, very long time. And so for that to have been like the spark of conversation all of a sudden, I mean, we've got First Peoples Nation here and that we don't talk about much and that we don't represent enough. So for something to have happened in America, how about here? Things are actually happening here, and let's face that. So I'm not too, like, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think it's you can't just say that's what it is, because again, there are some genuine brands, but then also, like you said, this has been happening for a long time, and we were all inside during 2020. Everyone was so focused on social media that it was like you had to listen, and if you weren't, you were clearly ignoring. So, you know, brands were getting called out and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's a good thing in a way, but it's like, I just hope that there's like a level of authenticity in the mix. But this next question's for you, Karinda. Like I said at the beginning of this panel, historically, fashion in Australia and around the globe has been subject to a lot of gatekeeping and exclusivity. But more recently, we're seeing creators break these barriers, like creators like, you know, Scenic Floors, which is, again, Helen, who is going to be with us today, Out West, you know, different creative directors coming to surface. What opportunity do you think that this level of innovation can bring to the fashion world?
I mean, it's only good, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Exciting.
Yeah.
the more voices you have on something, the better. Like, no two people are the same. So, more is more, I say. I'm like, bring it on. It's exciting. It's like, it's a time where, yeah, there's all different types of storytellers. Everyone's got a different point of view and a different background, and so that's going to inform the way that they tell their story or other people's stories. You know, like, fashion is so subjective, and you know, what one person finds beautiful, somebody else is going to be like, well, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
So it's that thing of the more people that you get to tell the story, the more likely it is that you're going to tell a story that reaches someone who maybe hasn't felt seen before.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So I think that if, you know, the more people that are doing this, the more opportunities. And again, with social media, brands are having to diversify their budgets. They're having to, you know, think about different ways to activate and kind of engage clients and people who are purchasing their products. And that means that, you know, you'll see smaller or like micro influencers or smaller stylists or, you know, people who maybe wouldn't have normally had a chance, getting a chance to actually do things on a really big level that's like international and actually really makes a difference to them for their career, but it also helps the brand, because the brand, I mean, every brand is always kind of trying to find the next thing, you know, whatever that is, you know, so it's like trying to keep up with the trend, trying to be able to be in the forefront of things. I mean, obviously some brands are more progressive than others, but I feel like in fashion in general, and especially for, you know, the smaller brands or brands that are a bit more cutting edge, they are looking to collaborate, because it's just like social media. It's like, you know, there's all these communities of people online, and it's about engaging those communities. So if Milan's got a bazillion followers, great, what is she telling them? And then also, how can I like work with her to be able to tell something to her people that maybe they haven't heard before? Or maybe it's like working with a brand that they wouldn't have come across. And so it's a way of kind of connecting people, but on a bigger level, which is exciting.
It's very exciting. I think a lot of people, you know, especially with young creatives coming and just making their own platform and just kind of creating their own path, it feels almost accessible. Like, it feels like, okay, if I was someone to look at that, I'd be like, you know, I can do that too. Whereas before, you know, in the past, fashion has been very like exclusive, high end. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but like you said, a young brand starting, they're going to need a photographer, a stylist, this, that, and you know, you bring people from the community in. So it's exciting to see what could happen. But to wrap up this panel, I just want to ask both of you.
That was so fun.
Was it?
I have more to say.
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, my bad. Okay.
Hold your horses, please.
I was gonna say, okay, go.
Yeah, no, I will. I just. Oh, no, it's all good. No, I was just, well, I have another question for you, Malaan, before we wrap up with the final question.
Yeah, can I have my question, please? Because I have a lot to say.
Just wrap up, and of course, also, if you want to, like, you can bounce off what Karinda originally said as well. But yeah, like, I can't, it's really hard to even put into words the, I guess the word is like representation, but the impacts that it has, because especially for, you know, people like me in Wintana and anyone else here who's like doing their own creative stuff, like just to see that someone who looks like you, someone who like literally like what you said, Wintana, it's accessible.
Yeah.
So just, you know, and that's something that social media gives us, but also just the work, the real work that people like you put in on a day. Like, it's just, anyway.
I would say on that though, too. Sorry.
No, go for it.
I mean, I don't know if there was a question.
No, there was no question.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's
cool.
a question. So,
Okay, can I just say also that, like, with the social media thing, it's awesome, but at the same time, I feel like maybe it gives a bit of a false sense of what it is to be in the industry. And so, like, for me, I think that the most important and invaluable thing that you can do if you want to be in the industry and you want to do anything is ask people if you can just come. Because it's the osmosis of like learning, because you're not, even if you're going to a school and, you know, there's so many, like when I started doing styling, there weren't, like, Australia wasn't doing like stylist courses. And there is a lot of things that can be taught and things that are really important. There's also a lot of things you just learn as you go along. And it's, you know, I feel like people, it's interesting because, you know, you have, when you're working on a fashion week, for instance, and there's volunteers that come, and I don't know what they think. Maybe because it's like, you know, they've seen it on social media, they think that it's super glamorous to be a stylist. A stylist is like, every day I'm like, why? Because my whole job is literally like going and picking things up, emailing people, ringing courier companies a million times, being like, where the hell is this thing? I need it for this shoot. And then running to get it, and then coming back. And then the actual shoot part is maybe like 2 hours, and then it's another like 6 hours of returns. And taping shoes and doing all these things which are not fun, but to create that product, which is amazing. And that
whole process to
there's a whole process to it. And so it's just the glamorous part that you see online, and I feel like maybe people just need to stop and be like, okay, cool, yes, you can become famous overnight and create your own content. That's awesome because you're going to learn from that. But at the same time, maybe also do some work where you're like, you know, assisting people or going to shoots and just seeing how it works, so that you actually know whether it's something that you want to do.
And we spoke about that today, actually, how a lot of industries, especially in the creative space, it's very romanticized, because you look at it and you're like, oh, I want to be a producer, I want to be a creative director, but really there's so much back end work that goes into it. But a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people also might feel intimidated to be just asked sometimes, because again, like it feels so like inaccessible, like it feels so far away sometimes, but it's good to know that that's something that people can just do.
So,
The question.
I know, there's no question. Like, I know that you have a lot to say. So I just wanted to ask you. You're an international model, amazing, but you also do a lot of work for the community. So you have a passion for community development, you have a passion for your community. So why is this so important to you, and how do you think we can create that sense of community in the fashion industry in Australia?
Community development and youth work is something that's very important to me, because I came here when I was 9 years old, and I had to adapt very quickly. It was easy for me to adapt because I was young, but it is something that is like, I don't know, I think we can all relate to this question very much, being of African backgrounds and living in Australia. So I try to use my experience all the time sharing with young people, whether it was just having conversations with my family or my parents who didn't understand why I was talking a certain way or like dressing a certain way, and like they wanted me to be, I guess, like more community minded or be part of like the South Sudanese culture. I'm South Sudanese, by the way. So there's a lot of like language barrier between a young person and their parents, and navigating between two worlds, like learning this whole new Western culture and also trying to maintain your cultural standards as well. It's very difficult, and so that's why I try to advocate for young people to learn from my experience and trying to break that barrier between the parent and the young person, so they can understand each other and so they can also help each other grow in this society. So that's how I got into youth work, and I think it's just something that's really important to that's something that actually keeps me grounded, because out here in this industry, I'm always the only person in the room, and I never really feel a sense of belonging. I just know I'm just there to work and then I leave. However, if I'm in that room and I see someone that looks like me, we always say, hey girl, and like, you know, we have our own conversations, and it feels really nice to have someone else in the room with you. And using my platform now, like young girls who want to get into the industry send me messages all the time, like, hey, I really want to get into it, how do I start? And I just tell them the basics of starting, and also the way when they do have that difficult conversation with their parents who want them to be something other than a model, and like, you know, also really educate our community that there are different paths that, you know, the young people can take. Like, we don't all have to be lawyers or doctors, it's great and all, but you know, there's other industries.
Or you could do it later.
Or you could do it later, but you know, some cultures are very, you know, yeah. So yeah, I just really try to have those conversations with either young people or people from all the elders, just so we can, I don't know, grow together and you know, yeah.
And it makes such a difference to have people like you in the industry. Like, it just creates such a bond. I remember when me and Rahel started, and just, you know, meeting like Lorinda and Fatuma Collective Closet, shout out to the closet, and you ladies, hey! It was different because you understand me, you can help me, you understand that I don't come from this kind of background or know anything that's going on in here. So it's beautiful, and the community in Melbourne is so genuine from our experience. So I love that. But yeah, so just to now wrap up this conversation, we will do questions.
We are wrapping up.
This is a real one this time. So what does the future, this is a question to both of you, what does the future of fashion look like to you, and what changes do you think need to be made, if any? And what advice do you have for young creatives, young people that want to get into fashion and just don't know how to? I guess we've spoken about it a lot, but Karinda, we spoke to you before this panel, and you did also talk about Side Eye Collective, a business that you were starting, so maybe this would also be a great opportunity for you to talk about it. So
yeah,
you can go first.
Together with another creative, Fozia Akalo, who's also of African background, I guess this has been through conversation, through working with like a bunch of, you know, like I do a lot of work with commercial clients, and it is that thing of almost tokenism, or they know they have to do something but they don't really know how to, and they mean well, but they're just like, ooh, it's like awkward, and they don't know how to talk about it, but we've got to do something. And so we are starting, or have just started, a creative consultancy business that's based fundamentally around like inclusivity and representation. So helping brands to be able to authentically tell stories and bring people from all sorts of diverse backgrounds in, and do it in a way that's not tokenistic. And I guess with that, you know, the conversation around representation and inclusivity is often quite heavy, or, you know, sort of comes from a place of angst, or, you know, because there's been so many years of like, you know, not being represented or not being listened to. And so the main mantra for this project is that everything has to be imbued with fun and a little bit of something different. So think outside the box. It's always got to be fun, it's got to be quirky, it's got to be something that's like a little bit left of center, maybe NQR sometimes, but in a good way. So that, yeah, it's like a point of difference, but it's also, yeah, the creative direction, creating events, and then also doing like product design and merchandise. So I do a lot of work with musicians, so film clips and photo shoots and things like that. So it's also about then extending that to be able to like create band merch, for instance, or if you're doing an event for something, then it's like creating something that you can keep afterwards, but doing it with other creatives who are from, you know, like diverse backgrounds, basically. So it's also about building the community, but creating opportunity along the way. So it's really about, you know, like, yeah, we're going to get Malaan to do the modeling. Oh, we need to talk about it on a podcast. We're going to go to Bittersweet. You know, it's that sort of thing. It's like introducing those brands who may not know where to go, or they're always going to that one person because they're like, cool, that person's ticked our box, we know that person.
Like they don't know anyone in the industry. They're like,
yeah,
diversity books, I know this person, always go to Malaan, always.
Yeah, and so it's also about like sharing that around and building a community of people so that you can literally be like, oh, you know, Malaan did last one, what about this person? Or, you know, like this person's like talking about this at the moment, like you should get them on board, you know. So it's kind of, yeah, I mean, which is cool because I love meeting new people and like telling different stories, like I was saying. So it's an opportunity to be able to work with heaps of people. My whole life is just stalking people on Instagram, literally. Like, yeah, I'm just like, hello, please be my friend. Do you want to do this thing I'm doing? Like, but it's kind of, it's, you know, that's what makes it fun and exciting, and you meet new people and you never know where that's going to lead to.
True, yeah, true. Malaan, do you want to answer? Do you want me to ask the question again? Or did you know? It was...
No, I remember it.
Yes?
It's fine.
Okay.
The future is looking bright, as you can see. Okay, very, very bright indeed. As I mentioned before, there's so many changes happening. In terms of what I am doing to help the change, when I go to shoots, I always, you know, recommend other diverse or people of color models to makeup artists or photographers. For instance, I recently did a campaign for Hair Scarf, and the creative director was looking for a young African family, and they were like, Malaan, we don't know where to go. And I was like, I've got a bunch of little cousins that would be really cute on your campaign. So just simple things like that, just like having those conversations on set and being open and being ready to you know, really grab that opportunity and share it with your community and be like, hey, this thing is coming up, are you interested? Yeah. For instance, I've been thinking of this idea for so long and I'm finally going to get around it. But you've seen now models like myself on campaigns and stuff, but like my little cousins still haven't seen themselves on little baby ads, you know. So as much as they've seen me, they haven't seen their young selves in Peppa Pig or whatever the little shows are on these days. So starting a children's agency, that's something that we don't have just yet, and that's something that I want to work on. That's something I want to work on and have people, you know, have that representation as well. So yeah, so that like, you know, young people can see themselves in media, in you know, as cartoons as well, and books. Yeah, but again, it does start with just having conversations. And my advice to young creatives or any aspiring young person, don't be afraid to ask. Now I think a lot of people are just like so open-minded, and I mean, there are going to be a lot of doors that are just going to say no, but if they say no, again, social media is around here, and you build a community there, and you show people what you want, and if it's something good and it's something that that is going to inspire someone, you're going to build a community, and that brand that said no is going to come back and be like, hey, so we want to work with you.
And then it's your turn.
And then it's your turn to say no, because yeah, so don't be afraid. If someone says no, then start your own thing, and people will come around. And trust me, there's more yeses than no that are out there. So yeah, if you want to ask me anything, come into my DMs and I will respond.
I love that. Thank you guys so much. This was amazing.
You have a dying question. What do you want
That's
to
what I'm
ask?
saying. We have a few more minutes. If anyone in the audience has a question, Reza, I feel like you've been dying to say
I just
something.
have one question for Malaan.
Oh.
I don't know how, I was thinking about it, but I don't actually know how to word it properly.
Oh my God, can I just tell you something before, while you think about your question? So last weekend I went to, so it just reminded me of something. I went to a end of summer event for La Roche-Posay. It's a sunscreen. I have to learn how to say that. And the panel was obviously all white, and I was the only person of color in there. And they were talking about sunscreen. And there was a dermatologist there, and I was dying to ask this question, but I didn't quite know how to phrase it because, like, it was something to do with like my dark skin and melanin, and like how my relationship with sunscreen is just not really like that, and I don't know why I'm here. So as I was sitting there, I was just waiting to ask this question, and then I grabbed the mic and I was like, all right, everybody, I'm just going to tell you a story, and if questions come from it, then it is what it is. So I basically told the panel, I was like, hey, so I migrated when I was 9 years old. I came from the sun, and I didn't really realize I needed to wear sunscreen. My teachers and I used to have this awkward interaction. It was like, do I wear a hat? Is a hat no play situation apply to me, or does it not? Yeah, and I was glad that I asked that because the dermatologist ended up actually answering it in a really, I don't know, like a really easy way and also very scientific way. I won't mention the science behind it because I don't remember, but she did say, because I did mention like me being in the sun, I can't really tell whether I've been burned, or I can't really detect whether like I'm getting like any symptoms, because usually like on fair skin there's moles and stuff, but for me, I've got this deep pigment that I can't really tell whether I'm in danger or I've been in the sun for too long. And she basically said, I need, for melanated people, we just need to look between our fingers, and if it's lighter, then if it's lighter, then you've been in the sun for too long, or looking under your armpit, because this side doesn't really, see any sun. If you can see the shade difference, you've been in the sun for too long. And yes, the no hat, no play applies to all of us. So wear your sunscreen. Now you can ask me your
I
question.
just want to say, I love how everybody is
Literally wearing my
but yes.
No, my question was more so you know how you said that you started modeling in 2010?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you are fetishized make you feel today? Like, does that make you? Does that show a lot of colours for you? Is my point.
Yeah, I get what you're asking. Wow.
Can you repeat the name?
Oh, okay. So the question was, since I started there in the industry 2010 to now, do I feel like my skin is fetish, or my look?
Yeah, your look.
Yeah.
Nowadays, obviously, they're like, we need a really dark look for this, but really that was never a thing. So do you feel that suddenly it's like everyone is doing it, obviously before, so the shops don't get bashed by...
So that I get cancelled.
Yeah, so they don't get culture cancelled or whatever.
Yeah.
But do you feel that those same people would have had a different outlook back then, and do you feel that this sudden change has impacted you in a certain way, or do you see them differently now to trying to get
Okay, I feel like there has been a sudden change. I mean, I am getting booked way more than I was before because of the movement and brands not wanting to be cancelled. In a way, it's good for me because I get work, but then also at the same time, like I mentioned before, you can't tell when a brand is being tokenistic or they're being genuine. And for instance, I worked with Nike last year as I ran Nike Melbourne Marathon. When I did the campaign for them, they wanted to hear my story. They didn't shove words into my mouth and say, hey, say this, or we want you to be part of this for inclusivity. It was more so like, hey, we've seen that you like running. Do you want to be part of the campaign? It was just as simple as that. And I felt that was genuine because they reached out to me from seeing what I do and what I love. And from that, I chose to tell my story however I wanted to share it. In terms of, I can't say the word, how do you say fetish? Fetishizing, that word. It happens all the time. Like I would get, like for instance, when they lather my skin with in oil and stuff, or like putting a color like this against, like, oh my god, that color looks great on your skin tone. Why can't that color just look great on me and not having to mention my dark skin, or like being like, oh wow, you're so smooth. It's just like those little words. Like sometimes they do kind of like, you know, I'm like, oh my god, we like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't point out your beautiful blue eyes all the time. I just look at them like, oh, you're beautiful, and then that's that, you know what I mean? Whereas in like, why do you have to go out of your way to mention how smooth my skin is, or how crazy, not crazy, obviously my hair is, but I don't know, like whatever word there is to like be like, it's like telling you like, hey, they're telling you the difference, right? So I don't know, it's just kind of pick and choose situations to, I mean, you can compliment someone, but you don't have to overwhelmingly compliment someone that it becomes a, what's the word? Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did.
Okay,
I
cool.
would say though, in the industry in general, like, and throughout like acting and modeling and everything, there is definitely much more representation. I know for a fact that like in my age group, like I've got a lot of friends who are actors, guys who are like Caucasian background, who were solid workers. Like they were on TV series, films, everything. And now literally they're all like sitting at home twiddling their thumbs because now everybody wants somebody who is like of some different type of background. They want mixed looking people, they want different people, and so literally all these like Caucasian actors who are amazing, but they're like sitting at home and you know, like when I started, first off, you know, it was that thing of like, well, there's like 3 shows that cast for, you know, there wasn't blind casting. It was like, you can do Lion King, you can probably do hair because that had black people in it. But otherwise, it's kind of like, well, we just don't really know what to do with you because we can't put you as a lead role because lead roles are like, you know, traditionally this is a Caucasian story, and so we're not there yet. Whereas now, it's everyone wants that kind of ethnic diversity. They want to have, you know, Bridgerton. You know, they want to have stories told in a different way, which is awesome, and also, you know, I guess
Questionable to an extent.
Questionable to an extent, but at the same time, I guess it's like the pendulum has to swing like one way and then the other for it to then come into the middle and like fine. And I feel like we're probably at a point now where it's still like kind of pushing.
I feel like it's interesting because, like you said, Bridgerton, for example, like as for example, I feel like there's still kind of this want for, it still needs to be palatable, palatable, which is frustrating because it's like, okay, it's still where they're like you're black but you're not black type of situation, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like it's a step in the right direction, but it's like they're putting their toes in the water, but let's not jump in type of thing. Which is things need to change, and it's fine that it's happening in that way. But when you come from like my background, for example, and you know, black women in general, it's kind of like, oh, okay, like we're expected to rejoice when they kind of just, you know, like it's not exactly where it should be. That's just my opinion.
I guess, like what Malaan was saying before though, coming from a brand's perspective, like they have a certain amount of data. Like it costs them a lot of money to make stuff. And so, you know, like Malaan was saying that Woolworths is testing out having the range for, you know, for everyone. And those sorts of things do take time. And it's something that like, unless a brand is like fully invested, they've got to look at budgets too. And so it's finding a balance between being able to balance a budget and have, you know, whatever it is that you're creating, getting to the right people, as well as also being able to still pay the bills. And sometimes that connects and sometimes it doesn't. And I feel like definitely with television production, like it costs so much money to make a TV show. That they're like, we'll just inch because we know that like if we go all in and it fails, then maybe we don't get to do it again.
Well, we remember that we're in Australia as well. Like there's an audience, and like you still have to make sure that you're appealing to the whole public,
the wider
Australia.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has a question, or we may wrap up. Okay, we'll wrap up.
I just want to thank you all ladies first and foremost for sharing your stories. what quote would you share with us that you've learned about?
Quote, I don't know. I feel like for me, definitely like a defining moment was when I moved from New York to LA, and my partner's sister lives there. She's an actress, and she said to me, "Nobody knows you here," which is a good thing. Because you can be anything. You know, like as long as you can back up what you say. Like she's like, Australians are too, like the tall poppy syndrome is good to a point, but at the same time, like that doesn't fly in the States. Like if you're like, I'm sort of okay, then they're gonna be like, cool, we don't want you then. You know, so it's like, you've got it gave me the confidence to be able to go into a room and be like, I know that I can deliver what I said I'm going to deliver. I'm not going to go too far into the deep end where it's something that I can't do, but at the same time it kind of gave me more confidence to be able to go out there, because it's true, like most of the time when you go into a room, the people that you're there with don't know you. They don't know your backgrounds. They don't know who you've worked with before. It's all like a face value thing. And so it is that thing of like, if you go in with confidence and you've done the work and you put in the time, you do the work, and then you can go in there and stand on your own 2 feet and be like, yeah, I can do this. So let's do it. You know, that's, yeah.
A good one.
Can't think. Oh, okay. Well, I would say my biggest thing is like never, ever, ever give up on your dreams. As hard as it can be, or as difficult as it may seem, stick to it because it will pay off at the end of the day. And that's something that I've learned along my journey. I started out modeling with that zero support from my family or friends, and I still did it anyways. So being in my New York apartment, South Africa, China, where else have I been? New Zealand. Being there alone, no phone calls, no messages, no nothing, I still stayed, and today I get to be here on stage and share my story and inspire other people. And through that, I didn't know what my purpose was, but now I found what my purpose is, and it's like inspiring young people and sharing my story and hoping that brings a certain joy to somebody, and to let them know that giving up on your dreams, you're gonna be sad and depressed, but if you stick to it, it'll all pay off in the end. So I think that's something I always live by, just never give up on your dreams.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. I want to say, I know it's an eye roll because we always say authenticity, but it's so true to be authentic in everything that you do and really believe in what you're doing. So Malaan said, like, just to believe in your own dreams and to never give up on yourself, but not everybody is going to see your vision. So just always, be your number one supporter, and eventually it'll come into play. And if you have that level of authenticity, I just don't think anyone can shake you, You just got to really believe in yourself. So that's the advice that I don't even know if the question was for me, so I'm going to regularly. Because self-doubt will eat you alive. So, you really need to be able to just, be your number one writer. Yeah. Did you want to add anything, sis? Or?
I don't know. I think I did very quickly, similar to everyone else here. I think one of the other big things for me, like, it depends what you're doing and why you're doing it, and authenticity comes into it as well. But someone told me, like, it's not all about you. Like, there's a bigger picture. And when I was able to step back and be like, okay, like, it's not about you, it's not the Rahel show, like, you're doing what you're doing for a reason. I was able to be like, okay, like, a lot of my insecurities went away because I was able to just kind of like realize there was a bigger picture. And once I realized that, like, I was able to just keep it moving. So I feel like the book grounded.
Yeah, thank you all for being with us today. Thank you to Malaan and Karinda, you were both amazing.
Thanks so much.
More of this.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Let's talk about an amazing panel that came together today. So,
Well, presents.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll wrap it up. Yeah, we'll wrap it up here, guys. Thank you.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.